today's Power webinar. We are thrilled to have jewelry designer and icon Victoria Wieck with us today. She went from a penniless immigrant to a highly successful business owner, generating more than $500 million in retail sales. And to me, that is a transformation story that we can all be inspired by. And today, Victoria will be sharing some actionable tips with us. Now, a quick backstory. Victoria started a small company back in 1989 to spend more time with her family and also to earn a living doing what she loved, jewelry design. Her dream life was making $36,000 a year, working 20 hours a week. Obviously, she's overachieved that goal. As I mentioned before, Victoria generated not 6 figures or 7 figures or 8. She's actually created a 9-figure business, and her business is more vibrant and relevant today than ever before. She has built a global business. Her jewelry is in Europe, Asia, Middle East, as well as North and South America, and even has her own TV show after spending 19 years straight on HSN, and she's currently on Shop HQ. She is the host of the $1 Million Hobbies podcast, a keynote speaker, and author of 2 books, Shattered Sky, which is a 94,000-word science fiction book. Oh, I'm looking forward to reading that one, and $1 Million Hobbies, how to turn an idea into a multi-million-dollar business. Today, she will speak on various topics on becoming successful and known as an expert in your field. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited to hear what Victoria has to say. So I'm turning it over.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here, and what an introduction, and what an amazing group. I mean, I love I want to thank everybody at P.O.W.E.R, Danielle, you, Tonya, and all the members, because I think that, now more than ever, women need to stick together. We need to share our knowledge. We need to share our love and compassion, because nobody succeeds alone. So I'm glad to be a part of this. And, I respect everyone's time. So I'm going to go over all of the topics that I think is important to run a small business. So many of you who run a small business, know that it's really hard to get visible. One of the fastest way to increase your volume, increase your scale, so that you can work less and make more money, is to be able to get visibility fast, and the right kind of visibility. For example, if you're a florist and you've got this incredible artistic talent, and you deliver the most freshest flowers in the world, you're competing with flowers.com and all those big businesses that don't have that, your heart and soul. But if nobody knows that you're there, it's really hard to, get traction. So I want to kind of focus on that now. We just went through, 18 months or so of COVID, where everybody pivoted. And I think a lot of you have done an amazing job of, lifting our communities, your families, your businesses, your employees. So now today's the time to stand out, actually, not just pivot, but stand out and take a stand. So let's get into I'm going to go over the broad topics here. And these are, obviously different experts have different things that work for them, but what I'm going to talk about today is specifically designed for small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. I'm talking about like somebody who's trying to become a 6-figure business to maybe a $10 million business. So guest blogging. So blogging is still important, it's relevant, and I'll go over why and how you can actually blog without having to spend hours and hours of that and get some traction with your blog. So you can be a guest blogger. If you could be a guest blogger at Huffington Post or New York Times or Forbes or whatever, those places where there's a lot of following already, you're going to be able to attract that guest, your blogs to your blog pretty fast. So guest blogging is pretty important. And then you have your own blog. Obviously, you can host your own blog. Then social media, obviously, that's a huge topic for a lot of people, and it's still a jungle for most of us small businesses. And, some things seem to work, some things don't. And how do you use it? And how much time is reasonable for you to actually, invest, and how much money you should invest? And then another topic, podcasting is a very big topic right now. A lot, that's an industry that's absolutely exploding. So you can be a guest podcaster as well, and then hosting a podcast. And by the way, if you are interested at all about pitching your product on TV, on any of the shopping networks, or maybe even an infomercial, or maybe you just want to do a commercial, maybe want to have a great YouTube series. Guest podcasting and podcasting would be a really huge issue for you, because you'll learn how to talk to people. You'll learn how to, look great and all that stuff. So those two, and then we'll go over paid advertising if you want to spend that money doing so, and then authoring your own book. So are we all ready to start with the first? So let's.
We are. This
Okay.
is all you now.
Okay. So guest blogging. I am a huge believer in guest blogging, in that, well, you should do both. You should host your blog and then you do your guest blog. So you write your blog and then you pitch your blog the same way you would pitch a TV show, or or a podcast, to other people who have their own blogs. And let's back up a little bit, because there's a little bit of a confusion as to whether or not blogs actually work at all for some businesses or not. That actually depends a little bit on the type of business you have. So if you have a business that really requires a lot of information, giving tips and tools or how to use your product, or maybe you're like a dentist or a lawyer, and maybe you're like a tax lawyer who specializes in divorce, that kind of thing, you really do need to write a blog. So when you write that, then how do you find opportunities to find guest blogging? So you might wonder, like, if I'm Allison and I'm simple Allison, and I, want to start a new business. And so how would I find, sorry to pick on you, Allison, but you're an easy pick. So if
That's
Allison
fine,
wants to
Victoria.
start, she just moved to, another state. So if she goes to a new state and she wants to start, let's say, a business, and Allison wants to guest blog. Well, the first way to find guest blogging is find the blogs that you read. Because if you're in business, if you're a florist and you're reading, you have a business, you might wonder, trends in, bridal, floral arrangements. You might want to. There's all these different things that you want to know about your own business. So you start reading relevant articles for yourself. Then what you have to understand is, those huge blogs, like large blogs, blogs that have a lot of following, they've got writers all, on staff. They've got writers who are just dying, looking for, because their job is to come up with content every single day, because that's how they get those big things. So what happens is, they're actively looking for great articles from you. From anybody, because they don't want to have to write 20 articles a day to find out what's working. So they are actually looking for, great relevant articles for their audience. So it's a matter of you finding the right places. So, start reading, like, I like reading Mind, Body, Green. It gives you a little bit about like what to eat, how do you lose weight, and, how do you keep your society clean and all that. So what happens is, I just use that as an example. You start reading and you start knowing who the writers are, you start knowing who the editors are, and then you just pitch them and say, you know what? I've been reading your article, and I love the article when you wrote, a thing about, vegan food. And I didn't think I was going to be really a vegan, but I really love that particular recipe. And since then, I have become a vegan, and I, wanted to write about my transformation, for example. There's a really good chance that they'll look at that. And if you, and don't forget, even if you don't, even if they don't hit it right away, the second or third time you write to them about some other article you read from them, believe me, there is a connection. You stick to that. That's a huge conversion rate. So that's a great way to do this. And the other thing is, a lot of times, let's say you want to pitch Elle magazine, or some other magazine, and you don't know who the editors are. One trick that I've learned is, you go to their, like, all magazines have like advertise with us kind of a button, or advertising department. They give you a lot of information: how many people are reading, who's reading, and how do you approach them. They'll tell you who the editors are, because they are very proud of all the editors they have. So that's a kind of a backdoor way to get to your blogging. So again, I started my business with $30 with the dream of making 36 grand. So I've had to do all these things myself. And so For those of you who have a little bit of time, and so when I went over all the different ways you could get visible, don't try to do all of them at once. Today, your goal is to pick a couple that apply to you. So if you're a natural writer and you like writing, guest blogging is a huge, that's a freebie and it's very easy to do. So I love that. Now, starting your own blog, same thing. A lot of times, if you write what you love and you don't have a lot of traction, you could then also invite other people to come to your blog and write, or share their information on your website. My daughter and I have a website called Rachel and Victoria. She's Rachel, I'm Victoria. And she writes about wedding rings. She has a millennial bridal site, which is dedicated to 100% lab grown diamonds. It's 100% climate change free and all that. And she writes. So if she were to collaborate with her, like a wedding photographer, or a florist, like wedding florist, or makeup artist, or there's a lot of that whole wedding businesses, wedding dress designers, for example, you're going to have a much richer and faster path to having your blog read. So if you're a blogger and you like writing, you can write your own blog, invite other people, and then you can also collaborate being on somebody else's, a non-competing business. So both of those together become a pretty powerful force. And one other benefit about blogging too is whether if you're guest blogging, by the way, one thing I will tell you is that put those hyperlinks in there. So if you're saying that, hey, I became a vegan and I have, a wonderful, recipes. And for those recipes, go to victoriawieck.com and you can actually put a hyperlink in there. So that's how you drive your traffic instead of at the end of the whole thing. So if you're a blogger, I'm going to allow you to, I'm going to allot a lot of room later on for Q&A. So I'm going to move these topics pretty quickly, topic to topic here. So I'm going to finish that with the blog. No, what's going to tell you the one thing about blogging that I love is that if you keep blogging, even though it doesn't look like anyone's reading it, because you don't know if anyone's really reading it or not, because people aren't commenting on it, or they're not reviewing your blog, for example. But if you stick to it, what's going to happen is over a course of a year, or how many ever years you've been in business, what happens is your website is keyword searched over thousands of words, not just the top 10 trending words, but because every word is keyword searched on SEO. So if this will actually rank the search engine optimization. I mean, I know that when my daughter started blogging on her website about, how to choose a wedding ring and, the types of stones and all that. I mean, her SEO search, there were like over 2,300 people per month, unique visitors that actually came in, checking out that stuff. So even though they're not commenting on that, it actually does add. So you can imagine over a year, that could be a lot of people. So I suggest you doing that. Now, social media is a huge topic for everybody, even if you don't own a business. So social media is very similar in that they use the word social media like all in a vacuum. So let's break them down here a little bit, because, number one, when we're talking about social media, you have YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, TikTok. There's just all these different, so if you're a small business, do I attack everything or do I pick a lane and stay there? I would say that depending on your business, if you're in business, if you're like a business to business person, you have no business being on, like an Instagram, because, that's not where your customers are. So if you are basically selling, let's say, a trucking service or hotel linens to, certain hospitality segments, your customers are on LinkedIn. They're not on TikTok. They're not on Facebook. They're basically on LinkedIn. So I actually have a friend who has a 60,000, he's got about 65,000 people that follow him on LinkedIn, because that's his business. He's a business to business. And when you go to his Instagram, he's got about 600 people. Well, if you're a potential customer and you somehow stumbled onto his LinkedIn, he's going to look like somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. But so he's almost better off not being there. But for his clients, he has about 66,000 people on LinkedIn, and that's where he wants to be. He only really needs about 6,000 people, but he's got, his customers, employees and everybody else, kind of connected to him. So, that's an extreme example, but if for most of you, social media does apply somewhere. So, as a general rule, if your customers are over like 45 to 65 years old, your home is more like Facebook and potentially a little bit of that on Instagram. So you want to pick a lane. I mean, you don't have time to, build a YouTube channel and do all of this stuff. I mean, even if you're going to hire an expert, I would say, choose a couple of lanes and kind of stick with that. And then also understand the natural DNA of a particular channel. For example, YouTube, the number one reason people go to YouTube is to educate themselves. They want to know how to do something. So if you were to Google, for example, if you type in ice cream and type into Google, they're going to basically give you the 3 nearest locations for the ice cream store. If you go to YouTube and type in ice cream, what's going to come up is how to make a certain kind of ice cream. So remember that if you don't have that educational channel, then YouTube is not for you. So, again, like look at your the native reasons why these social media platforms actually, started. Now, assuming you know what you're doing, in terms of the lane, what I would suggest is that, like for example, like Instagram and Facebook. But by the way, Facebook was designed to give you relationships, who you're related to, who your friends are. It was never supposed to be a selling channel. So use those channels wisely. Now, if you're talking about something like an Instagram, for example, because a lot of people are now jumping onto Instagram, and Instagram it's kind of an interesting topic because it's a younger customer, but I would say even if my customers, for example, on jewelry are about 40 to 60, that a lot of them are now coming onto Instagram. So I just want to go a little bit about my strategy on Instagram. Number one, if you don't make everything exactly the same. In other words, don't tell them to buy, or don't talk about your product all the time. You wouldn't in the old days, you wouldn't get up and, meet somebody and go, hey, Allison, it's really nice to meet you. Would you like to buy this? I mean, you wouldn't talk like that, right? So you would want to build a relationship, gain a little trust. So what I do is I have an editorial calendar. So every Monday I post a motivational inspiration thing, like in a motivational Monday. So I train my audience to sort of think, hey, I'm starting a new week with this optimistic thought. Then Tuesday I take a rest normally. And then Wednesday I would put like a tools and tips kind of thing. And then Friday is a fun Friday, it's anything goes. And then on weekends, sometimes I post, sometimes I don't. I will tell you that there are some major trends that happen in Instagram. For example, it's not really a trend, but the Instagram users, they really value pictures. It's supposed to be, it kind of grew up as a raw, unfiltered, moments that are captured. So of course now they've gone through many iterations of this, but facial expressions, facial images actually work. Number one, that's if you're posting anything, you're in doubt, put up a picture of yourself, your family, your kids, whoever, but faces actually really work. Lifestyles work really well. Educational things like little tools and tips that you haven't shared before. I mean, it could even be like how to cook fish. I mean, anything that's sort of somewhat related to you that makes people trust you, makes you look more human. And then lastly, the way you gain a little bit of a following is like people love to be relevant. So if you ask for their opinion, you might want to post something like, hey, I'm trying to paint my house or my office, or, with the whiteboard or blackboard, which one? So if you just, get them engaged a little bit and ask their opinion, you'll find that there's a little bit more of a lift there. So on social media, the other thing about social media is that What you need to know, I'm going to always tell you the truth. Like a lot of times, you may not love it, but I'm always going to tell you the real honest truth, because I've been the recipient of bad information. I paid a lot for a lot of information that didn't work out for me. So social media conversion rates are very, very low. I mean, they're pathetically low. Okay. So for example, if you place an ad on Facebook, your conversion rate is like, I mean, people who are professional Facebook advertisers would just jump over. They'll be doing backflips if they get 2% conversion rate. I mean, their conversion rate is like somewhere between 0.5% to 1%. So that takes a lot of money. So, social media, I would say for my business, I use it to educate people. I use it to inspire them. I use it to connect with them so they can check me out. But I don't use it to drive sales. Now, if you want to drive sales, I mean, there is a whole other art of doing that. You're going to have to do some paid ads and, combine different strategies. The other thing I'll tell you is don't be so stuck on quantity. In other words, like if you look at Instagram messages, I mean, just look at some people who have like 10,000 followers. They put up a post and they get like 4 people liking them. That's really not high quality, because you could manipulate those numbers. You could also buy bots. Instagram actually sells you bots. So make sure that whoever you have, it's like a fanatic fans of yours. They're not going to be, like you want legions of loyal fans that are almost borderline fanatic about you and your product and your employees. So that's what I'll say about social media. Then we go to podcasting. I actually really think that podcasting is the new broadcast. I come from 24 years of TV, and I can tell you why I love podcasting is that when we are on TV, many people don't realize like we look like we're all chilled out, having a great old time, but you don't realize that basically podcasting is basically being on TV, we are judged on a dollars per minute basis. So, if those of you who've ever watched me on HSN, you'll find that we're moving from product to product to product. I mean, when I have a show, I go through a minimum of 20 products an hour. And I've had hours where I had to go through 52 products in a 58-minute hour. Okay. So you don't have time to talk about anything. You don't really have a deep dive conversation about anything. You sell. There is obviously art to the power of storytelling. But what I love about podcasting is that there is no, especially guest podcasting, there is no other place in the world where you could walk in as a guest. And the host of the podcast has, spent years building an audience, building a tribe, building that trust. And they're just handing over the keys and say, hey, Allison, hey, Tonya, come on and just like take over. So they have the ability to collapse time. They have the ability to gain that ultimate respect quickly. The other thing I love about podcasting is usually there's only one guest per episode. So whether that's a 20-minute segment or a 30-minute segment, you get to talk about you and how, who you are for 30 minutes. That's a lot of time. If you place like a radio ad, you might be able to place a 30-second ad. And unless somebody happened to be listening to the radio or driving by and you happen to listen to them like at that very moment, you don't even see it. And then when you actually get somebody who listens to you, you get a chance to kind of blur out your phone number and who you are. I mean, you don't get a chance to talk about who you are, what makes you so special for 30 minutes at a time. So giving you a quick example, like if you said something like, for example, if you're like a real estate broker in Manhattan and you were on a podcast talking about real estate markets, and you have to understand people who are listening, the audience chooses the genre, the episode, the whole thing. So they had some interest in that real estate market in New York. So if you talk about, hey, I'm Danielle, I used to be the social media director, I used to be the marketing director, and I fell in love with this particular property. I got doing this and that, and I ended up selling it. And the next thing I know is I became the sort of the expert in Manhattan real estate, specifically in Midtown. And, what I love about this, and she talks about how she got there and what she loves about it. If you were in the market for anything, like in real estate in Manhattan, and you were listening to that podcast, you go, you know what, that Danielle sounds so down to earth. And, she kind of got into this by accident, but boy, did she know what she was talking about. Right. So even if you only had 2,000 people listening and you had a like a 10% conversion rate, I mean, that's like 200 people who would call you, and who wouldn't love that kind of lead generation. Right. So that's why I love guest podcasting. So, I'm going to go a little bit about like how do you become a guest in these podcasts. It's very similar to the guest blogging. You should start listening to things, podcasts in your genre. And again, I'm a podcaster. Let me tell you, trying to find a guest every single week that's top notch, who's going to bring in great, fresh content. That's hard. I mean, every single week I have to find somebody who's an expert in something that people didn't know, that people are going to fall in love with. So podcasters are actively looking for great guests. And so if you have the qualifications and you know how to pitch, and you respect the audience and you've listened to that podcast, it's not that difficult to get on one. It's a lot easier to get on one than going on like a regular TV show. But the benefits, I think, are bigger than going on a regular TV show. Then the next one, obviously, naturally, hosting a podcast is a huge benefit. I will tell you that as a host of the podcast, I kind of started mine just to market my book and also share I wanted my TV audience to come and connect with me on the podcast, because I rarely have time to talk to them, when I'm live on TV. What I found is that, number one, from every guest, I learned something. It's amazing. And secondly, it opens a lot of doors for you. When you tell people you're a podcaster, everybody wants to be on it. So I've had some amazing people on my show. I mean, like I just interviewed a guy, who was really close to Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And in fact, his episode has not been released yet, but literally all these people that would have never given me the time of the day are all begging me to get on my show. So it opens up a lot of doors. It also allows you to pitch to other podcasters that, what you're doing. You're a podcaster yourself. So, I love doing that. So if you're interested in that, you can ask me more questions at the end of this, this event, because not everyone's going to want to do it. So I'm going to move on to the next subject here. Paid advertising, like I told you, it's expensive process, but even if you are going to do paid advertising, make sure you understand, whoever you're hiring is going to write a great emotionally connecting copy to your potential clients, and understand what you're trying to accomplish. Like, go with the goal. Like, if you want a lot more engagement, you want people to, you want to drive traffic to your website, or you want to generate an actual sale. This is called the key performance indicators. So you designate what important issues are, and then find that one lane again to, find the best return on your money. And if you want to, I would definitely, tell you that you should probably hire a professional that knows how to do that, because you can spend a lot of money with no return for a very long time. And then last thing is authoring your own book. I didn't think English is my second language. I didn't think I was ever going to write a book, even though I had all these ideas in my head. And I now have written 2 books, and it's not especially, I believe that every business should have a book, a how-to book, because it's the easiest way for you to establish your expert authority, such as, hey, if you're a local NBC affiliate and you were looking for, a local issue, like a local, like out here in San Diego, every year we have issues dealing with the drought, the water usage and all that. So there's a lot of discussions about the type of plants that we can plant and all that. So if you were looking for local authority and somebody who really understands this geography, and you've got 50 people to interview, most of the time, those people actually will go with somebody who's written a book and say, hey, so-and-so is the author of such and such, and we're so glad to have, and she happens to be local here, by the way, that kind of thing. So authoring your own book is not as daunting as it sounds. And as I said to you a little bit earlier, many of you maybe came in a little bit later, but how to start, because so many people first of all, I would say, as a woman, look, we all have a story. Okay. Like there is no woman who hasn't gone through struggles. We all have a story. We all have an amazing story. We all have something to give. And your story is worth telling. And if you think that it takes so much time, you got to be a genius to write a book, I would say start with your FAQ, the most frequently asked questions on your website, and you should have one, by the way. And if you look at the top 5, 10 questions, those should each be chapters of its own. So you've got like a 5, 10 chapters right there if you just like expanded the FAQ sections. And then you should add a little bit about what makes you unique and what makes you more qualified than anybody else. Why do you deserve their business? And then you have the introduction, the conclusion. So, it doesn't have to be a huge event, but I mean, right now, like self-publishing is a huge thing as well. So every business needs one. It's like a giant uh, business card. It opens a lot of doors as well. So that is pretty much what I had in mind. Now, one other thing I want to talk about too is free PR. PR is very, a lot of people think PR is very expensive. It's not accessible. And, many of you might even have some experiences having a PR agency on your team. They usually start out at about $5,000 a month. I mean, the least expensive ones start at $5,000 a month. The going rate is like over $10,000 a month. And they usually want, like a 6 to 9 month retainer, like a contract, because their whole argument is, we don't know until we actually try it. And a lot of times you get very little return for that money. There is a thing called HARO, HARO, and it stands for Help a Reporter Out. So just like I told you earlier about bloggers needing content, podcasters needing guests, reporters need content. Now, in the news business, if you're like in a newsroom and ABC, NBC, all these Forbes, usually you have an editorial calendar, but, like regular magazines have editorial calendars. News people usually have something that they have prepared in the can. But let's say like, the day like Princess Diana died, for example, everything they had planned goes out the window because that takes precedence. So all of a sudden, the head of news department or the paper says, cover like royal food and, royal fashions and, royal whatever, the royalty takes over everything. So what happens is these reporters who's worked really hard for their job, and this, by the way, happens a lot. They don't know what to do. So they'll actually post, on Haro, help a reporter out. Hey, I'm looking for an expert in, etiquette, for example. I'm looking for an expert in, formal, menus, or, I'm looking for an expert in, there's all these different, that's an extreme example of this. But, when we had COVID, Haro actually is free, completely free. You don't have to buy a thing. And you've got small bloggers. A lot of bloggers are actually on it as well. I mean, recently there was a post about, it was called a CEO blog. And they had a post about, if you're a CEO who started a business to look for, freedom of time and freedom of money, and you're still running that company, please, give us your story. So you simply just click on that thing, and you'll probably get a bunch of other CEOs, hitting on your website. Everybody from Forbes to New York Times, I mean, they're all on it. They're not on it every day. I mean, this is not their like lifeline, but occasionally you will have, well, every day, actually, I get it. I think I get it like 3 times a day. I think they publish like 5 times a day. So, and they have it by category. So, lifestyle, medicine, law, finances, health and fitness. I mean, so you can go through them, the categories that actually apply to you. So I hope that that's been helpful. I think I covered everything that that was on my list. So right now I can, I guess, answer questions.
Awesome. We actually have some really good questions in the chat. Now, one question that I want to bring up, I mean, I'm going to try to get through all of them, but this question was from Mario Ficini. How do you decide in social media, how do you decide between image posts and video posts?
You know, personally, myself, if you can do video, I always go for the video because, people rather, watch, things in action, whatever. But the only time I actually will prefer, because video production costs, time as well. I mean, you want to get the
Mhm.
lighting correctly, and unless you get real raw moments. But I would say, like my Monday morning post, which is usually a motivational things, that one is always like a nice little, like a plaque. If it's a retro, like, throwback Thursdays or whatever, then I would probably do, you know, but a mixture of both is really good but videos always get more attention um, than a still picture for sure.
Okay. Next question. Hold on a minute. Uh, bear with me a second. Now, this is from Marcy. Where would you add your blogs to other than your website? So if you already have your blogs on your website, where else should you put them?
Well, you could, collaborate with other people in non-competing businesses. Like I said, like my daughter's site, she does millennial wedding rings. She has little suggestions that, she wouldn't do it every day, but she has a photographer. You can go to companies like Knot, talking about how to choose, how to propose. There's all these different, so I would say the best way to do it would be collaboration with other businesses that do not compete with you.
Okay, Myra Ford asked, what social media would you recommend for A, but it got cut off. So Myra, if you could just retype the question in the chat so we have the correct question because something seems to be missing. Um, let's see. What about doing live DIY videos on social media? Does it hurt or help? And this is from Stephanie Brooks.
If it's a true DIY, I would consider YouTube for doing that. And yeah, YouTube would be the best way to do it. And for YouTube, I mean, the way I would do it is if you're natural, if you're like a home base is like Instagram, I would do a little teaser video, and then I would say, for the rest of, this Instagram, you really don't want to do a 10-minute video. So you
Right.
might want to say something like, check out my YouTube channel. And then you might want to clip those out. So like maybe 5 different little 10-second things and, do it every day for 5 days and drive that traffic back to YouTube. But
Excellent.
yeah, normally YouTube would be a native thing for videos.
Awesome. Now, this is from Catherine Sempicos. What do you think about Facebook advertising for a med spa?
I think that's actually pretty good for a med spa because it is a little bit older customer, and that's where they naturally hang out. And Facebook actually happens to be Facebook is the necessary evil. So even if you're only like if your customer, like my daughter's customers are all like 18 to 29, but you do need that Facebook for a lot of other things. So
Okay.
it is a necessary evil, but for med spas, I think it's actually pretty good, very good. But if you're going to do paid ads on Facebook, you need to kind of supplement it so that, I would do anytime you do a paid ad, consider this not as a one-time event. So you have a pre-paid ad, and then it's like a job interview. You basically prepare for it, and then you have the event itself, and then you have the post. Like when you go for a job interview, you do all your research, you get all dressed up, and you do all the hypothetical questions. Then you actually have the interview, and then you do the follow-up. So make sure that you plan out all the pre and the actual, and then the post. Have a real business plan for that.
Now, the next question from Michelle Lau. How do you pitch a podcast?
That's actually a really, really great question. So I think that number one, you got to be polite. Nobody wants to deal with anybody who's not polite. And when I say not polite, it's like, don't write things like "Dear Podcaster," because like that, that tells you they haven't even done any homework. So, find out what makes them tick. I mean, the first way I would do it is something like, "Hey, congratulations on your podcast. I listened to, your episode number, whatever." Even, I mean, you could you don't have time to research every podcast to that extent, and you don't have the time to listen to 50 podcasts, but you might want to say, I listened to episode so and so. And you know what? You could listen to it for the first 3 minutes,
Right.
but still, right? I listened to your episode so and so. What an amazing, podcast. I think I could be a really good fit for your audience because I do XYZ. Don't give them like, hey, I'm the best, I'm the best guest there is, or, things like that, because, you just hear so much of it. So focused on what your contribution is to that audience, not who you are, like how you're going to elevate, because a podcaster's number one goal is to make sure that the audience gets what they need. So make sure that you turn that around to do that.
Excellent. Now from Ed Lanaya, what social media outlets do you feel is better for a health and wellness supplement company? Our target audience is women ages 35 to 65. However, Facebook is restrictive for supplements. What do you suggest?
Wow. I would say Facebook is where you should be. And I understand how restrictive Facebook could be. And just so that you know, if you ever want to pitch like a TV show, like on HSN, QVC, or Shop HQ, they're going to be just as restrictive because they don't want to get, lawsuits and things like that. So I would say you really work on your disclaimers. There is for example, there's a guy who sells vitamins on TV. I mean, he's got a $150 million business on TV. And I mean, his whole thing is full of disclaimers, but you don't actually know it. So, for example, like he's selling some vitamin for, like eyes, supposedly it helps you with your vision. And instead of saying it fixes all your eye problems, he actually calls it, something eye support. So it supports your eyes. Okay. So, and then a lot of times instead of like, I once sold aromatherapy beads that go into little jewelry boxes. And they came down and said aromatherapy is not a scientifically proven, whatever. I mean, you're going to run into that no matter what, you're going to run into this. Remember, Instagram is owned by Facebook, so you're going to get the same restriction. And Google is going to be very similar. So deal with your disclaimers. So like with the aromatherapy, instead of saying these are aromatherapy beads, they made me say something like, this gives me the feeling of, aromatherapeutic, whatever. So there's all these ways you can get around that language. And there are people who kind of specialize in it. But whoever asked that question, you can actually later on connect with P.O.W.E.R, because I can actually give you a little bit of help on that.
Yeah, I'm going to give that information in a little while. Just want to get through a few more questions here. Can you take, I'm guessing what Marcy means, can you take someone else's blog and reuse them and add to it?
Not without permission.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, not without permission. Now, if you asked, I mean, first of all, you would have to get their permission and you have to get them credit. So if Marcy was going to use something I said, and she wants to use it, she would have to ask me. Now, if that blog has been already populated, for example, if you are going to use like a Forbes article and it's been quoted like in the New York Times and other places, after it's been quoted like 2 or 3 times by other people than the original writer, then you can do that, what she said. But let's say she just saw something on my blog, and then she would have to ask me, do you mind if I, use it or repost it? And at that point, she might say, according to, I love this blog that Victoria Wieck wrote, and according to her, X, Y, Z. So
okay. Now, along with that, can you add the blogs to Google? Marcy, I'm not quite sure what you mean. You're not actually adding the blogs to Google. You add them to a site and Google pulls it.
Right.
Okay, I have a question from Tsiki. Hello, Tsiki. Good to see you here. What's the best way to get more traffic to your website?
Oh, God, a lot. That could be a
It
whole.
almost doesn't surprise me that Tsiki's asking it.
Yeah, that could be like so blogging is actually, I mean, all those things. I would say that if you're podcasting, if you're basically every day when I podcast and when I'm on a podcast, I'm on different podcasts, I'm being interviewed. I usually drive that traffic. So if I'm on, in fact, I was on the P.O.W.E.R podcast, yes, a few months back. And I would talk about, what I do, why I do what I do, and what I love about what I do. And I drive that traffic to, for more information, you can check victoriawick.com, or I forgot to mention to all of you, I am loading up. It's not up there right now, but I'm loading up on my site within the next 2 weeks, like 6 mini video series and different series on how to pitch. For example, I actually have a thing like how you can pitch me. So by giving away that freebie, people come and check you out. I would say the best way to drive traffic to your site is generosity. If you're sharing information, like I'm sharing how to pitch me or how to pitch any show, which is a huge topic, and it's completely free. They don't have to buy a thing. They're more likely to check to see what else is free next month. So, lead with generosity, and, I think that would be a great. Now, all these other things you do, your social media and everything should have a link to your website. Guest blogging is huge. I mean, you could get 2, 3, 4,000, 10,000 people to your website if you get on the right guest blog.
Now back to Myra's question. She completed it, so we have the whole question. What is the best site for teaching people how to speak in public?
You know,
And then we're going to do one more question after this.
yeah.
At the end.
I would hate to say, I would love to direct you to somebody for that. It's actually, I'm not going to, because there really isn't anybody that's not going to charge you like $50,000 to, I mean, there's a lot of places that'll charge you a lot of money to teach you how to speak in public. Connect with me later, because what I want to tell you is speaking is very individual. So individual to your DNA. Some people like to be very flashy. Other people like to be very quiet. So it depends on your content and your topic and the venue that you're going to be at. So, there is a little bit of the fear factor of just being on stage, and then fear factor of your content not being really tightly woven. And then there's all these other things. So I would say that speaking is very individual, and you should get individual attention. Like you shouldn't be, it's not a do it like a one size fits all, or even five size fits all. So, we'll try to get you to the right places for those of you who have more questions.
Now, one last question, and then we're going to start wrapping up. The one last question is, hold on. Is there a do and don't say list for live Facebook videos? If so, where can I find it? I know that you can't say share, only sprinkle, and so on. So how would you answer that question, Victoria?
I'm not sure if there's one place where a question like that, you've got two things. One is, I'm not sure which direction the question was, whether or not you sort of adhere to Facebook rules, or it's a moral obligation, meaning that, there are some things I wouldn't do on Facebook that Facebook's not going to care, whether I do it or not, but I wouldn't do it just because it's not good business and it's not good for your, morality type thing, even if you can get away with that. So I would say that use your best judgment in terms of, what items. It's just like how you would handle, like in the old days when people used to actually meet up in person. The only other thing I would tell you for all of you, and this is a really important part, is that if you're in business, don't look for like a magic pill. So social media, guest blogging, all of these things will help you. But remember, if you're looking at anything over like $200 purchase, today people are so smart. I mean, you as consumers do the same thing. You wouldn't look at some ad and just go, boom, I want to buy this right away. They check you out. You want to know, if it's going to be good for me. Is it a good buy? Is it going to actually work? What kind of a company is this? So research has shown that it takes somewhere between 5 to 27 touch points before they will buy anything from you. And so when you use your social media, and that doesn't mean it's all every single day is an email. But it could be one day social media, the next day it could be a YouTube, a how-to video, the following day it's an email, the following day it could be an offer. So remember to use all of these things in coordination. These are all the tools to get you to that touch point. But when you touch all these people, the number one reason why people buy anything from you is that they have to really like you, they have to love you, they have to trust you, they have to respect you, and they have to know that it's a good, it's an irresistible offer. Even if it's a $50 purchase, you have to make sure that there's value add. And other than that, that part I can't help you. So one last thing, I want to, before everybody goes, I want to tell you that I have just been kind of inundated with a lot of people asking me how to get their products on TV, how to sell products on video. So I'm going to tell you that for the Power Gala this year, I'm going to be there the day after the gala event. So, to answer questions, and it's going to be all free.
Yes.
So if you haven't signed up for the gala, this year it's going to be limited due to the venue. And, I know that there were all these issues with issues with COVID, because remember, these things are booked like a year in advance. If you haven't signed up for it, go ahead and sign up for it. And then the day after, the next day, when I hold the little mini seminar, like the more individual attention for you, the seating for that is going to be very limited, and it's going to be free. So do that today, because that's going to be like your reward for doing this. Because when that whole email goes out to the rest of the power group, it's going to be packed up pretty quickly. So
actually, the invitations have gone out. It is, I mean, there is a minimal charge for that. It's not totally free because we have to pay for the food and everything.
Okay.
But it's a
All right.
minimal charge. Now, I do want everybody to know, if you have any further questions for Victoria, you can send them to either info@powerwo.com, or you can send it to myself, which is aswordloff@powerwo.com. Most of you already have my email address because we've communicated. So if you don't, again, it's info@powerwo or aswordloff@powerwo.com, and we'll forward your requests to Victoria. And if there's any further questions, any more information, just let me know. Also, one of our members posted that there's a Facebook terms and service that you can find by going to facebook.com/terms.php. And that can answer the questions that you might have with regarding using Facebook and posting on Facebook. Victoria, thank you again. We are excited that
You know what?
joined us, and you gave wonderful information. Tonya, everybody here thanks you. Tonya thanks you for doing this. And I don't know about anybody listening. I've heard some amazing information, and I had heard you speak before, so I got different tidbits from the last time. So this was great.
Hey, one more thing. For those people interested in podcasting, specifically podcasting, I set up a website for that, and you can apply for it. Danielle, do you want to, is Danielle left? Has gone? Okay, so it's videopodcastingpower.com.
I'm here, and we are going to be actually sending out an email to all of the attendees today, Victoria.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. After we wrap here, we're going to be sending out an email with all information that's needed. So just hang tight, guys. You're going to be receiving an email right from Power with all the information that we need for this webinar for today.
Yeah. Look, I look forward to meeting you all at the gala. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again for joining us.